Hi, Ellen. So it's a pleasure to have you on our current class list. I'm going to put you as our main speaker today. And if you'd like, maybe introduce yourself a little bit. This is currently for the University of Houston Digital Media and Design program. It's part of the Making the Future seminar. And our guest is Alan Nguyen, and he's from Space Junk. He's currently speaking to us, to my understanding, from Amsterdam, or are you in a different location right now?
I'm in London now. I just hopped
Okay.
the other day.
Very nice. So maybe do a little intro, and I'll mute myself so that you could also be part of the discussion. Thank you so much.
Well, I guess part of the presentation is going to share a little bit about my background. But anyways, I'm a graduate just like you guys from U of H, or about to be graduates like you guys from U of H. I'm now living in Amsterdam. I worked for Freedom of Creation, Fresh Fiber, and 3D Systems, and since then created my own design label called Space Junk, where we work on futurist designs and work on newest, greatest technology through all of my collaborations, connections in the past 2 years. And I guess that's about it. Is that good?
Yeah, I think that's a great intro.
Okay. Cool.
There's a few more students that are joining in. They're just having problems accessing the room, but I have you on the big screen, so hopefully they at least could see you.
Cool. It's a bit weird to introduce. I'm not used to talking about myself. Yes. All right. So should I just hang tight real quick before?
No, go ahead. They could see you on the big screen, and they could also hear you. They're just trying to join in on the GChat. A few of them already have really keen questions for you. So.
Really? Okay. So basically, what I'm going to do is have a little introduction about, I guess, myself, Space Junk, how I got to where I'm at, and then it'll be somewhat brief, and then we'll get into more of what you guys really wanting to focus on, and then I guess more or less a Q&A.
That's great.
I made a presentation where like we can jump around into the presentation and get to different things. So that's hopefully that'll work out. I've never done this yet. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to do screen share. Let's see. Share. You guys see the screen? Can you see the presentation?
No.
Not yet.
Okay.
Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, but is it full screen or is it just kind of half screen? I can't hear you guys, by the way.
Well, I can see the whole screen, but I see the tabs and everything. I don't see just the presentation.
If I do play like this, can you see everything?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right, so...
Wait, now you're back to black.
Oh, it doesn't show anything again?
No.
All right, then I'll just have to do it like this.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so... Wendy, is this okay? Can't really tell what's on the screen.
Right now there is an image of you kind of covering one eye.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a cover.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so... All right, obviously my name is Alan Nguyen. I'm a co-founder and creative director of Space Junk. You can follow me on Instagram at Alan Nguyen or at Space Junk. And this image is kind of important because it's kind of how I've done the things that I've done. So basically, I usually have one eye open and one eye covered because I'm an observer, but also I kind of just jump into it. And I think that's the best way to do things. No. Work like that. We're just gonna have to go through navigation. All right, so who am I? I'm a designer, entrepreneur, artist, futurist, optimist, voyeur, traveler, risk taker, pursuer of happiness, most importantly, human being. The reason why I write human being is it's really important that you guys also remember that we're all human beings. We're not extremely perfect. We have flaws. And the reason why we're in design is to kind of help aid these sort of, I wouldn't say flaws, but human characteristics, right? But we live in an awesome time. We can basically do anything we want. I mean, technology has brought us into a point where there's so many new possibilities, new creations, and also the internet has allowed us to really capture new friends and new audiences. And how is this kind of happening? Technology, obviously. You guys are studying about new ways of doing things, and it's only possible from things like software. We now can be our own accountant, publicist, salesperson, webmaster, therapist, doctor, advisor. I mean, pretty much for nothing. Usually these softwares have been only available to, professionals or super rich people. Now we can get our hands on them. I mean, sometimes not very legal ways, but we can get our hands on anything that has access, and so the reason why we've been able to use this technology is because the roles have kind of flipped a bit. Usually when you have an accountant or a secretary, they do all the work for you. We're now an input-based society where we have to put our own input. And there's a bit of a drawback, though. Even though this software is much more accessible, there's this comes at a price, right? Time. And this is really important for you guys to understand that time is money. I know it's kind of a saying that's been said many times, but it's extremely important because the more tools that we do have, the more we spend on it, we actually forget that time is a commodity, just like money is, just like parts 3D printing or technology is. And at a certain point, you have to remember that you have to use your time wisely. I mean, this all comes at a cost. We traditionally work at a 9-to-5 job for security, but we lose so many valuable hours of our life to things that we generally have no interest in. So the question that I've thought of the past few years is like, what's the point of having money when we briefly get to enjoy the weekend? So you should really think about what you're doing and why you're working for this sort of for this dollar. What is it paying for? So I had this deep conversation with myself a year ago, and the reason why I left 3D Systems to create Space Junk. And so Space Junk is a futurist design label that utilizes the most advanced technologies that allows us to create, collaborate, and make things that we particularly like, and a niche of people that also enjoy our products and vision as well. And this company is totally digital, and this is the reason why I'm able to talk to you guys from London instead of Amsterdam, where I live, and also instead of Houston, where I'm from. So now, Space Junk is still in its infancy. So before I sound like I know what I'm talking about, there's still a lot of work involved to run your own business and a lot of things to go correctly to make it successful. So before we jump into that, I want to share with you guys how I got here and where I'm at and things I've learned and experienced along the way. So here we go. How did I get from Texas to Amsterdam? Basically, when I graduated high school, I had no clue what I wanted to do. Actually, what I really wanted to do was play paintball professionally. And as a son of an Asian family, that wasn't gonna fly. I had to create a career or choose a career, and so I just looked at my parents. I didn't know what to do, so I saw my mom was an engineer, my dad was an architect, and naturally I chose engineering because, as you guys will find out, architecture doesn't really pay very well. And I also heard that students slept at the architecture building at night and studied, and I thought that was a bit crazy. So I chose engineering, and I did really well, but it's boring as hell. And also I wasn't really crazy about efficiency or math, so I did 2 years of it, and of course, unfortunately, met a girl who was in architecture and decided to see what they're up to. And I heard all those stories with people at night, so I decided to go at 1 in the morning. And was wondering why they were still there instead of being creative in the dorms, making beer pong tables out of shelves and seats. But come to find out that they were cutting paper and painting cardboard instead of studying for exams, and I was kind of all about that. That was pretty cool. So I thought, how can you guys not be studying anything and getting grades by making craft? And so I immediately switched degrees that summer and came to the architecture school and got into the summer program where we had a lot of fun, a lot of sleepless nights, and as you guys know, a bunch of crazy ideas happen. And after graduating, there was a decision between industrial design and architecture. So I'm really passionate about industrial design. I'm also passionate about architecture. And I had this guy as professor, Cord. I hope you guys know him. If not, you should meet him. He's a great guy. But he basically sat me down and told me that you should do architecture first. Don't do industrial design, do architecture first, because it's a great foundation. And if you still want to do industrial design later, you can always do it. So it was the best advice I ever had, because architecture is certainly a great foundation. And so I breezed through it, 3.5 years. Here's some of the projects that I got to work on. I was really focused on kind of connections and the way that things would deploy, how you can have multifamily strategies, the assembly processes, and also really focused on parametric design and digital fabrication. That's what really got me excited. And so we got to work on the ceiling cloud. And at that time, this is when Grasshopper was first becoming available to students. So, I mean, this was really infant where you couldn't even do Control-Z. If you made a mistake, you're kind of screwed. But we made the prototype, which was really cool, and I graduated. And then after the graduation, I talked to Cord again, and he said, look, if you still want to do industrial design, you can. And I took his advice, went to industrial design, and joined as a junior, actually. Unsuk fought for me and got me into the program as a junior instead of starting fresh. And the thing with industrial design is you have this amazing person, Unsuk. And industrial design is a bit different than architecture because you go more of a smaller human scale, and you understand more of the needs in everyday life and form and ergonomics, colors, and psychology, and have a bit more of an understanding of how people interact with an object instead of within a space. And for me, that was a bit more exciting. And so here's a few of the, I was in the industrial design program very briefly because, well, I'll get to that. So what I learned in industrial design, though, is that you get a lot of collaboration and teamwork, which is something that I wish we could have a bit more in architecture. And it's great because you prototype, you test, you iterate, and then you actually have to have a final product that works. And you get to spend a lot of time with these people, and I still have good friendships with them, even though they still spell my name wrong. And then also you kind of learn a bit of your own design language. And so it was a very brief 1 year because you also have to do an internship as part of the program. And I landed on this company called Freedom of Creation. And it was actually at the perfect time. It was when everything was starting to happen. It was 2011. It was an explosion, and Amsterdam is kind of a hotbed of 3D printing activity. And so I got to work on some extremely exciting projects. Freedom of Creation is very avant-garde, pioneer of 3D printed designs, and we got to work on lighting projects. This is the Dahlia filament project, 1597. some chandeliers, some mushroom clouds. This is actually one of the first lighting projects I worked on as a junior designer. Office interiors, furniture, more furniture. We collaborated quite a bit with fashion designers. Shoes, more shoes, jewelry pieces. And this was the first time I was really exposed to multi-material projects too. It wasn't just plastic. Accessories, more accessories. New collaboration. It was a really exciting project I got to work on. Actually, one of the first projects I really got to lead myself. And we also explored typography, textiles, worked on campaigns for Onyx Tiger. This shoe is actually about 4 or 5 feet wide. Other campaigns, this was really cool. It's a helmet that was fully operational. The speakers worked, the dials worked, everything. We even had like this backpack with a subwoofer on the back. It's really, really cool. And even just really just kind of why not projects where we had a battery-powered 3D printer on a bicycle. And most importantly, this guy, Yana Katana. He's more of like a brother to me, I think. I mean, he's a mentor. He's an awesome guy. He's the first guy that ever really took 3D printing seriously and wanted to create true end products. Because before this, 3D printed products were just prototypes. They weren't seen as anything else. And Yana saw a vision of where 3D printing could really be part of mainstream life. And so he wanted to disrupt everything. Design, distribution, IP, all of it. And so I was down for that. And at the time, we got acquired by 3D Systems. And there was this point where the whole maker movement was happening. And we were creating a new platform called Cubify. We had stores. I was even a featured artist. And they had a different sort of business model. And what I thought was, well, if we have cool designs, let's give them away for free. We should be able to kind of feed a little bit of fuel for the people who are purchasing these machines to be able to print things. Instead, they were a bit, they wanted to charge for everything, which is, I can understand. Businesses need to make money, but I was on a different playing field. So this is where I come back to Space Junk, and I realized I had an opinion. And for a long time, I was really on the sidelines, just as a voyeur, like I said before, just seeing things happen. But at a certain point, and for you guys as well, you should have an opinion. You should really think about what it is that you want to do and not really follow trends. And if you follow trends, you'll get into a trap. And if you go to a company that's cool, but you don't really also have the same sort of mentality or the same vision, then it's a trap for yourself because you don't really have room to grow. So I fought for a voice within 3D Systems, and they're great people, but it just didn't make sense for me to grow. And so I really thought about, well, if I'm here 9 to 5 and I'm not doing what I want, what's kind of the point? And there's this triangle of time, quality, and money that's really important. So you don't really have to be a millionaire to do the things that you want. You can still do the great things that you want. You just have to really think about it. And this also inversely affects the way that you produce products as well. And there's this fast, cheap, great thing. You can only pick two. So if you want something that's really great and you want to do it really fast, you got to put a lot of money into it. If you want to do it really cheap, you have to put a lot of time into it. And at a certain point, we're running into problems where we're trying to be fast and cheap, and you can't have anything great. And so I figured I wanted to do something on my own that is going to be great. So I'll spend time, don't have a lot of money, and so there's a lot of core elements that became Space Junk. It's passion, collaboration, technology, art, and entrepreneurship. So passion, it's everything that I love. And basically, Space Junk is forget climbing, make your own space. We're in this we're in this part of the world where we don't really have to follow trends anymore. We can do what we want. We can share how we are, and we can be who we want to be. And so for me, it's passion. You have to take risks. It's scary, but this is the perfect time to do it. If you don't do it, you'll never get a chance to. You'll have kids, you'll get married, you'll have things that kind of hold you back. So now is the perfect time. Do the things you want to do. If it fails, at least you'll learn something. Collaboration is important. You make a lot of friends, you meet a lot of great people, and you learn new tools. Technology, this is one of the digital marble lines of Space Junk. This is something that nobody's ever done before. I would never have been able to do this if I was still working for somebody, because I got to explore and learn new methods. So this is really unique. You're going to see this everywhere eventually. And then of course you got to have fun. Some things don't have to make sense. And for me, this is what I wanted to do in this space. And then of course entrepreneurship. A business has to make money, so you really have to learn and create your own business plan. So Space Junk is about being fearless, and that's how I got to where I'm at. And now there's still a lot of information, a lot of things that I'm going to go over, but what I want to do, instead of wasting valuable time, I'm going to give you guys topics that you could actually pick. This might not work now because I can't go full screen, but I have these main topics that we can click into and see. Maybe it'll further help what you guys are trying to pursue. So I have information on history of 3D printing, how 3D printing has changed industries, different types of 3D printing technology that we can go into, also different materials and finishing, and then of course entrepreneurship is something that I've been really focused on this past year. So if you want to talk further about entrepreneurship, we can also do that as well.
So Alan, are these links? Because if they are, I could actually feature them on the showcase on the side.
They are links, but they're linked within the PowerPoint, or the PowerPoint keynote.
So they're not public links?
No, they're not public links, but I do have public links within the links. So just trying something new, but I guess it's not going to work so well right now. So what I have is here is like the history of 3D printing. There's the different movements. We can go into that, or we can go into the different industries. So we have art, aerospace, automotive, architecture, dentistry, education, fashion, food, law, medical, music, pharmaceutical, product design, retail, software, and sports. And then for technology, I can help.
The students are going to ask you questions on the group chat, and maybe from there they could kind of highlight which topics they want to have kind of as the startup point. Perhaps what you could, just for interest of time, what was the kind of major turning point, or which topic do you think in terms of the technology aspect do you want to speak about it? Okay, so Vinny wants to talk about entrepreneurship. Do you want to talk further and more deeper into that topic? Because you have a subcategory on that.
Hello?
Hey, Alan, did we just lose
I'm
you?
back. Yeah, I got cut out.
So we're just kind of polling the students right now on seeing which topic they'd like. Seems like the first round is entrepreneurship. Do you want to dive deeper into the topic?
Sure. I mean, any specific questions?
Do you guys have any specific? Feel free to speak out. I'm gonna
Yeah,
let students.
make the conversation, I think.
Yeah, let's start the conversation up. Unmute yourself and feel free to speak. Vinny, do you have any questions? Because you called up first.
And I guess how do you make money pretty much? Like what are the different ways of making money from what you do in general?
From what I do. So basically, I mean, we're still kind of a traditional product design company, or product-based service company. So I do two things. I do, on the side, I still do consultancy. So people have digital fabrication problems, they come to me and I solve it. And then on the other side, Space Junk is a product base, so we sell products and that's it. And the thing is, as an entrepreneur, in getting into the product design or product field, there's a lot you have to learn about business in general. So when you design a product, especially something that you like, you have to capture an audience that likes it as well. So there's a lot that has to go behind marketing. There's a lot that has to go behind social media. So and there's a lot that has to go behind branding. So who you actually are. People buy into who you are and not necessarily this facade of what the company is. So what you'll see now more and more is that people are interested in the person, how things are done, and behind the scenes. And that gives a lot of added value to the actual product. If you just create a product, put it out there, most people won't pay attention to it. You have to really have a lot of touch points. So Facebook, Instagram, Vine, Twitter, all of the above. The more content you can put out there, the more people can hook onto it. And then, so that's more of the branding side, more storytelling side. And then when it comes to really the business side, you have to learn the different aspects of margins. I mean, it's very simple. All the work that you put into it, is it going to be worth it? So if it takes you, like for example, we do a lot of digital products, however, or 3D printed products, but they're not just like 3D printed or a design and then sent out, 3D printed, and that's it. We put a lot of extra finishing off of it. We do a lot of digital handcraft. So when I design a jewelry piece, I get it raw, and I actually hand polish it myself. And so I get to learn a lot about handcraft in traditional jewelry setting. And then on the apparel side, you learn how to handle communications between manufacturers. And then as the fashion jewelry, you really have to get into editorials. So you actually have to have kind of a PR agent, I guess, to get your stuff out there so people know. And so to come back full circle, to make money, you have to be able to price your products accordingly so that you're not going into debt of having too much manual labor. Also, you have to account for all of the taxes that come into it. You also have to account for shipping and handling. And so even though you have a product that costs $100, if the cost, usually you want costs to be 2/3 of the price or half the price, like max, you don't want to go over that. So let's say it costs $50 to make a $100 product. You still have to also include tax. So in Europe, it's 21%, which that already takes out $21. So basically, you're left with around $30 of profit left. And then you have to take care of shipping, which international shipping could cost $24. then you're basically left with $6 profit out of something that costs $50, right? So there's a lot of math behind pricing.
Just a quick question to continue your answering is, with regards to the cost benefits, do you actually, when you were actually producing this, when was it the point that you kind of transitioned into understanding this? Or did you feel your education at UH provided that, or was this actually more on-site learning as like a practitioner?
A bit of both. Architecture, we didn't learn it at all. Industrial design, we actually have to figure out BOMs and yeah, really actually push out BOMs. But I really didn't learn it until actually just jumping into it and making mistakes.
Within the production realm, did you, I mean, I know the huge kind of topic, and this is kind of like a selfish question because a lot of what I'm researching on is about digital property and like issues of intellectual property, and I know Jan is really interested in this topic. Did any of that actually kind of rub off on you to kind of understand how that process works? I know that your business model was to kind of try to put everything onto the public domain, accessible for individual users. Do you feel like you have that same kind of mentality still after you started your own business, or is there more kind of a top-down approach?
I'm sorry, I keep cutting in and out. I didn't hear that.
Do you have more like a top-down approach to how you're figuring out the intellectual property issues, or is it still as nascent as your early kind of iterations of trying to put everything out in the public domain for free? Or are there issues of intellectual property that you're more concerned with now that you have your own business?
I mean, personally, I don't really believe in intellectual property. I mean, I do have a patent. It was a goal of mine, but I feel intellectual property is something that really that belongs to individuals instead of large corporations. We are our own huge corporation now, even though we're very small. So honestly, like, I would give all the designs for free. The actual added value is not the digital file. It's really about having a piece of or being a part of something. It doesn't really make sense business-wise, but that's our angle, I guess.
I think that's a very interesting kind of discussion on that, because in the larger respect, that's how Linux kind of came into play, and the grandfather of Linux and open source. That was kind of the mentality. There isn't really an owner, but there's more of like a leader that moderates what actually gets produced. I think that's a very interesting aspect. I think one or two students over here has a few questions. Who wants to kind of jump right in? I know Benny already asked one question. Okay, so Benny has another question for you.
So if you don't believe in intellectual properties, do you ever like notarize your ideas for like products and stuff like that?
I've done one when I was working at 3D Systems, only just for the novelty of it. Okay. But no, I honestly try to share everything with everyone, because I mean I've learned a lot from people sharing, and I feel like it's also my duty to also share it with people as well.
Okay.
But I mean, if you do have something groundbreaking, maybe it is important so that people don't steal it because they could abuse it. And if it comes from a right place, then I do believe in it. But for the most part, things are moving so quickly that by the time it does get approved, it's already too late. So why bother waiting 2 years when you keep moving? So basically, the more content you create, you become more and more ahead of the game.
I think one aspect of the intellectual property issue isn't really just to protect it, but a lot of times what I've heard from different kind of larger manufacturers are standards and quality. And with the kind of ability of 3D printing and actually the self-mass customization of objects, do you feel that that hinders your process in terms of if you were to put something on market and somebody else could actually produce it, that the quality or the standards that you actually set for your product, would that actually hinder what your output is?
Well, that's pretty interesting. So what's funny is I work with Fresh Fiber, and we made like accessories for iPhone cases and iPads and things. And so the funny thing is, usually China is very good at copying, right? And so 3D printing is very difficult to copy because of the geometries compared to injection molding, right? But what happened was, when we visited the factories out there, they were actually copying the iPhone cases to a T without any different iterations. And the thing was, their quality was actually even better. And the problem was, we couldn't even chase them because, first of all, it would cost too much money, and it would cost too much time. And so there is, I mean, the aspect of the quality of the production is really important to a point where it's original. And original is really, that's what it is. So when you get a painting, when you get a copy, you want the original, right? And even if it's not as high quality as another person's, the original is still more valuable.
I think that's a very valuable point, and it goes back to like early readings of Walter Benjamin and his kind of reproduction. I guess machining is a very interesting aspect of looking at it. But beyond that, should I put the stage back to the students? And Vinny had 2 questions ready. Kevin, you said you wanted to ask a few questions. Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Feel free to unmute yourself. I'm going to mute myself and give Kevin the stage.
Okay, hi. I'm actually really glad that I have the opportunity to speak with you, because I think you can really help a lot with our group project. Currently for this class, we're looking at developing small-scale wearables like jewelry, and I've seen your work before, and I'm really interested in speaking to you because I'm very interested in the way that you use digital fabrication to produce all of your work. Right now, my team is looking at a mass customization business model, and how you can use digital fabrication methods to create custom-made, tailored jewelry for specific people. And of course, that's been used before with 3D printing and groups like Nervous System, et cetera. And we've been doing a lot of research on that and looking at how that's the way of the future, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other hand, we're also looking at how we can apply things like casting to this. Because that's not a model that we've seen yet before. However, casting, from what we've seen so far, casting and the mass customization business model are kind of disparate because it's not economical to sort of make a cast for every single possibility that's out there. So they're very traditional. They still don't even do online orders. You have to actually call them. Sorry, keep going. We were kind of just wondering, do you have any suggestions on how we can sort of reconcile these two sort of disparate methods, and how would we approach this project as entrepreneurs? Yeah, so I also have the same difficulty as well, but usually what it comes down to is having a relationship with the foundry itself. So you have to create the new process. They're very traditional people, so usually they still use standard mail to create orders, which is really strange. And I literally have to call them to place an order. But the way it works now, so the mass customization is extremely important with Nervous System. So those guys are really great. And what they've done is they've created kind of a DNA for their product and allow people to create their own custom. So that's the added value for them, right? And we also did that with iPhone cases to allow people to put their names into it, which is an advantage over injection molding or other traditional methods, because it just costs the file, doesn't cost anything extra to do it. And so what I would say is, what will happen is you're going to have a vast amounts of digital files, correct? You're going to be able to produce them, I guess. How are you going? Are you producing them in wax, or are you going to do what kind of material is it going to be produced out of?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear the question.
What kind of material will the product be produced out of for casting? Is it going to be made out of wax?
We were looking at resins.
At resins. Okay, so you're looking at like DLP or SLA printed object. Okay, that's also right up my alley. Yeah, so the thing is, foundries traditionally work with wax. It's easy for them. There's a burnout cycle that has to work with a certain formula. So different materials have different temperatures. With wax, it's much easier. The burnout's very clean. You don't have any residual residue. But with resins, you actually have to do, you have to ramp up the temperature to get a clean burnout. Otherwise, you're going to have artifacts and essentially have a really terrible finished product. And I think the complications that you'll run into when working with jewelry, especially with casting, is that there's a lot of effort into the finishing. That's where the added value really is. And the finishing costs quite a bit because it's very labor intensive. And you basically have to figure out what the cost benefits are of a certain finish. But my suggestion is that, I don't know, have you ever finished a jewelry piece yourself before? Like to polish?
Not.
No? Okay. What I would suggest is you should take a a jab at it. It can be quite difficult because when I first got into it, I really wanted to get into doing all this bling bling jewelry with grills and stuff. I met Johnny Dang, got super excited about it, and it's easy to think about it because you can just make a digital file, print it, and then you have it. But it's a bit more complex. You really have to get into the finishing of the products. And the way that typical foundries work is that they have sprues connected to the jewelry piece. So even though you have like a perfect, let's say it's a ring, when they cast it, they have to connect it to a tree. And so there's always going to be a sprue that you have to cut off, finish, and polish. And it's quite difficult, in my opinion. But if your nervous system, if you're Jessica, what they do is they partnered up with Shapeways, and basically they off-put all of their manual labor to Shapeways, which is very smart, because then there's hardly any input on them. They have to raise the price a bit. Maybe they have a pricing agreement with Shapeways. That also depends on volume of how much you sell. So that would be the more preferable route, so you don't have to put any manual labor into your own self. But the thing is, then your added value has to be much higher than the actual labor costs.
I have two questions for you. One is one student and group is Benny's group. They're looking into perhaps establishing an online platform that you might have experience with the Cubify. And another group is Alicia and Felipe and Brandon's team. They're looking at prosthetics. Do you have any kind of suggestions that you might want to kind of add to that? Or maybe Alicia and Felipe or Brandon, do you want to ask a quick question to Alan on progress or suggestions?
So I know a bit about prosthetics because we had some really great people in these systems. I can actually go to a slide. There's a guy by the name of Scott Summit. I don't know if you've met him.
I'm going to try to type that for the share. Do you have a website for that, or you can maybe put it on the group chat?
Let's see. Scott Summit, his company was Bespoke Innovations. He was one of the first guys out there really. Let me get my screen share. Let's do the entire screen. All right, so. So he worked with paraplegic patients or amputees, and basically his added value. I mean, there's already prosthetics out there to do things, but his added value was to be able to give people their confidence back into basically make it cool to have, or make it cool to be who they are, basically. So his goal was to be able to give them a characteristic back to who they are, so make prosthetic to reflect them, basically. And he worked a lot with materials, which is kind of cool. So Shapeways is great because they have all of these different materials available. However, if you really want to do some especially amazing work, you have to go out and do it yourself. So right here is a prosthesis, and all of this is 3D printed. It looks like metal. It is metal at a certain point, but basically the way that they made this process was it was SLS printed nylon, and then it was nickel plated, but a really heavy nickel plate, and it's essentially metal. And the great part is that it's extremely structurally efficient because the interior, the plastics, is very lightweight, and typically in structures, the interior doesn't add to the strength of the properties. It's all usually the exterior, tensile, the tensegrity, I guess, of the metal. And so I don't know if you've seen Jana's new bench, but basically he did the same thing. And
yeah, Yanni's new bench is actually quite massive. So did he actually? I'm actually. We spoke. I'm trying to get him either here in Houston from LA for the final review. So that was part of the discussion still. But we'll see whether or not we can. Otherwise, we're going to do another Google Hangout like what you did.
Jana's bench is not feasible. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I remember him in his little photo shoot sessions. It seems like it's a very bespoke piece, but in a large kind of mass distribution, it's kind of questionable on how it could actually work.
Well, if we just account for time, the thing would have cost 120K purely on time, not even the materials and so on, and also the plating and everything. But it is a really cool thing, to put it that way, and it does really push what 3D printing can do, but it's far off from kind of mass producible things. It's just it doesn't really make sense yet, but it's cool. But as far as prosthesis, I can share that with 3D printing is really great because you can create really accurate mirrors of things. So it really does fit. It's not just kind of like a one size fits all, which most of them are nowadays, but they're very cheap. 3D printing is still a bit expensive, and the benefit though is that it becomes part of you. And so what I wanted to elaborate though is that they also work on they had a collaboration with EXO. Got this link here. EXO Bionics, which helped this lady. Forgot her name. She was a total paraplegic, and the EXO Bionics exoskeleton that actually allowed her to walk again. And the 3D printing aspect of it created customized pieces that fit her contours so that she doesn't have any stress or strain on any of the parts that contacts her, which is usually the problem in the cases of prosthesis. And the problem is they can't feel those areas that get touched, but it really damages the physical parts of the body and the skin, and you get kind of what's it called, like, when you lay in a bed too long. Is that called bed pain? I don't remember what that word is. But
that was really useful. I think some of the students might find that useful. Do you guys have any specific questions that you want to ask Ellen before we disband? Maybe another group is also looking at built 3D printing built objects, especially in the brick format. Nicholas, do you have anything that you want to ask specifically? Are there like any material constraints that you found, especially you wanted to print really fine fibers? Do you want any kind of heads up or questions on that? You good? Okay.
Alicia had a question on 4D printing. Should you hop into that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Um,
Did you have a question on 4D printing? Okay, cool. Okay, so she wanted to know a little bit more on, I guess this is more like Skylar Tippett's kind of
yeah.
arena.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
because I have very kind of opinions on that, but go ahead, you could go first.
And I was a bit, at first it was more or less, it felt like just kind of publicity stuff. But I see where he's going with it, and I think it's far off from where it's going to be. But I guess the principle behind it is that it's programming characteristics within the design. So if you think about it, it's really programming materials. And so right now what we have with 3D printing is just form, or at least the early stages was just designing form, and then you could also design different features in the form to allow things to flex or to rotate. But instead of just a sheet of piece of paper, or a sheet of material made from different materials, you would be able to program different characteristics within that material. So I also believe that's really where we're going to is programming materials. So a form that has a certain form but can also have different mechanical characteristics, different heat and temperature characteristics, different.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate kind of representation of what he's trying to research on. Yeah, it's pre-programmed characteristics within kind of certain printed materials that perhaps could also kind of magnetize or kind of reconform in certain states. And I think that's what Skylar is really big on. Whether or not, and I agree with Alan, whether or not that could actually be in the immediate future, I think it's still at least, it's in the very kind of early renaissance of how it could actually happen. But I think it's actually a great way to explore it, and the Media Lab definitely has the resources to offer him to research that, whether on big scale or small scale, artistic scale, or just kind of sciences. It's actually quite interesting. So I'm going to stop us there so that it doesn't end up getting too much of your time. But thank you so much for speaking with us. And it was really great learning your kind of way of establishing yourself as a student and until now. And how long was this process from graduation till now?
Graduated in 2011, so 4 years.
So it's a pretty quick step up for you guys. It's good inspiration for these guys, especially the undergrads that are really interested in both, or in the trifecta of engineering, ID, and architecture. And now you're into your own kind of space of business. It really promotes the entrepreneurship spirit that this class is truly trying to provoke. So the next step is, and next month actually, currently we're gonna take the students to South by Southwest, and good news is for everyone, I actually was able to get everyone a day pass, so that's happy. So Alan, if you're back in Austin for South by Southwest Interactive, I'm bringing students there, and thank you so much for talking to us. This is a great opportunity, and I'm sure if there's any students that have kind of follow-up questions, can they actually attack you? Or is he still there? It seems like he's frozen.
Yeah.
Are you there? Okay, cool. Maybe I'll have them kind of add you on Google Plus or on Facebook or something like that. But thank you so much for coming, and I'll give everyone a clap for him maybe if you could hear him. So yeah, okay. Have a great day in London.
You. And also, feel free to send me messages, emails, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm always here to help.
We'll definitely attack you. Okay. Thanks. Take care.
All right. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.